Rain tapped softly on the window of a small apartment in Dallas, Texas. The sound was steady, almost like a sad song that had no end. Inside, John Miller sat on the edge of his old couch, staring at the floor. The room was quiet, except for the ticking of a broken clock that hadn't shown the right time in months. The table in front of him was full of empty beer cans, unopened letters, and a few crumpled bills. The light from a small lamp flickered weakly, making the room look even more tired than it already was. John was 47 years old. His face showed every year of it, deep lines under his eyes, tired skin, and hair turning gray at the edges. He had once been full of life, a man with dreams and laughter in his voice. But now, he was a shadow of that man. He had lost his job 8 months ago. Since then, he had tried to find work anywhere, doing anything, but no one was hiring. He had worked in construction for most of his life, but his back pain made it harder now. He was too old for the hard jobs and too uneducated for the easy ones. Bills kept piling up. His landlord had already warned him twice. He was behind on rent, his fridge was empty, and the only thing that seemed to grow in his apartment was dust and silence. John leaned back and looked at the ceiling. Maybe this is it, he whispered to himself. His voice was dry and broken. He hadn't spoken to anyone in days. He looked at the wall where a single photo hung crookedly. It was a picture from 5 years ago, him, his wife Sarah, and their little boy, Ethan. They were smiling on a beach, Ethan sitting on his shoulders, sunlight in his golden hair. John stared at the photo for a long time. His eyes filled with tears. "I miss you, buddy," he murmured. He hadn't seen Ethan in 3 years. After losing his job and fighting with Sarah, he had left. At first, he promised to visit every weekend. Then every month. Then, never again. Sarah had moved to another city with Ethan. She said it was better that way, stable, calm, far from his chaos. John never blamed her. He blamed himself. He took a deep breath and reached for the small wooden box on the table. Inside were a few things: a lighter, an old watch, and a folded piece of paper. It was the note he had written earlier that day. Just one line. "I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore." He folded it again carefully, as if it was something sacred. Then he placed it beside the photo frame. The rain outside got heavier. Thunder rolled across the sky, and the power flickered. The room dimmed again. John sat still, listening to the storm. He looked at the small bottle on the table, white pills, half full. His hand trembled as he picked it up. His mind started talking to him, the cruel kind of thoughts that come when someone has lost all hope. No one cares anymore. You've already failed. It's easier this way. He swallowed hard, trying to fight the thoughts, but they kept coming back. He stood up slowly and walked toward the window. Outside, the street lights blurred through the rain. A few cars passed by, people rushing home, holding umbrellas, laughing maybe. All living their lives, something John had forgotten how to do. He turned back toward the table. The photo of Ethan caught his eye again. His little boy's smile felt like sunlight trapped in that small square of paper. "I wonder if you even remember me," John whispered. "Maybe it's better if you don't." He sat back down, his heart pounding. His breathing grew heavier. The world around him felt slow, dull, and meaningless. He closed his eyes, trying to find courage to end the pain. But just then, knock, knock. He froze. The sound came again. Knock, knock. John looked at the door. It was strange, nobody visited him anymore. Not neighbors, not friends. He didn't even order food. Who could that be, he muttered. He stood up, walked slowly toward the door, and stopped. Whoever it was, they didn't speak. They just slid something under the door, a small brown envelope. Then, footsteps faded away down the hall. John stared at the envelope lying on the floor. His name was written on it in small, messy handwriting. To Dad from Ethan. His heart stopped for a second. He dropped the pill bottle. It rolled across the floor, disappearing under the couch. He bent down and picked up the envelope. His hands were shaking. The paper felt soft, slightly wet from the rain outside. He stared at it, unsure if this was real. "Ethan," he whispered, his voice cracking. How did you find me?" He sat back on the couch, holding the letter tightly against his chest. For the first time in a long time, he felt something warmth, fear, hope, all mixed together. His eyes filled with tears again, but this time, they were not from pain. They were from something different, something he hadn't felt in years, a reason to stop, to wait, to breathe. He looked at the envelope again, the small, uneven handwriting of his son. The thunder outside grew louder, lightning flashed across the window, and John whispered to himself, maybe, maybe not tonight. He leaned back, staring at the letter, afraid to open it but knowing deep inside that whatever was inside could change everything. John sat completely still. The letter from his son lay in his hands like something sacred, something fragile. The rain outside kept falling, but inside, time had stopped. His fingers brushed over the small brown envelope. The handwriting was messy, uneven, the way children write when they're still learning. It made his heart ache even more. He whispered to himself, Ethan, my boy. He ran his thumb over the words to Dad from Ethan. Each letter felt alive, like his son was reaching out to him from far away. John hesitated for a long time before opening it. His hands shook so much that he almost tore the paper. He hadn't heard from Ethan or Sarah in years. No calls. No visits. Nothing. And now, suddenly this letter. He took a deep breath and slowly pulled out a folded piece of paper. The edges were worn, maybe from being carried around for a while. The paper smelled faintly of crayons and sunshine, the kind of smell only a child's backpack would have. When he unfolded it, he saw a drawing first. Crayons, bright colors, uneven lines. It was a picture of two people standing under a big yellow sun, one tall, one small. The taller one had a brown stick for hair, the smaller one had golden scribbles. Both were smiling. Above them were two words written in big, shaky letters. Me and Dad. John's throat tightened. His eyes filled again, but this time he didn't try to stop the tears. They rolled freely down his face. He turned the paper over and started reading the letter. Hi Dad. Mom said you're working far away. I miss you. I won my first soccer game last week. I scored 1 goal. My coach said I ran fast, just like you used to run with me in the park. I wish you were there. I still keep your lucky coin in my school bag. Remember? You said it makes brave people braver. I think about you when it rains. Mom says you love the rain. I do too now. I hope you're okay, Dad. I love you. At the end of the letter was a small heart, drawn in red crayon. Next to it, Ethan had written. Love, your son Ethan. John couldn't breathe for a moment. He read the letter again and again, each word hitting him harder than the last. He could almost hear Ethan's voice saying those words, laughing between sentences, full of life and love. He pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. He whispered, he still thinks of me, he still loves me. All the pain, the guilt, the anger he had carried for years, it cracked like glass inside him. He thought back to the day he had walked out. He had been angry, ashamed, tired. He thought leaving would make life easier for Sarah and Ethan. He didn't want them to see him fail, to see him weak. But now, sitting there, holding that letter, he realized the truth: he had only made things harder. For all of them. He remembered the last moment before he drove away. Ethan had run after the car, his little feet splashing in the rain, shouting, Daddy, don't go. And he had kept driving. He told himself Ethan would forget. But Ethan hadn't. John wiped his tears and looked around the room: the empty beer cans, the broken lamp, the silence. Is this what you wanted, John? He whispered to himself. To end up alone while your boy still believes you're a hero. The words hit him hard. He stood up and paced the room, the letter still in his hand. He looked at the pills on the floor, the ones that had almost ended it all. He picked up the bottle, opened the lid, and poured the pills into the trash. The sound of them hitting the bottom was sharp and final. He sat back down, breathing deeply. For the first time in years, he felt something break open inside, not pain this time, but a tiny spark of life. He looked at the letter again. Ethan had written it with love, with innocence. The boy didn't know his father had disappeared into darkness. To him, Dad was still somewhere out there, working hard, maybe coming home soon. And that belief, that pure, simple belief, had saved John's life. He folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the envelope. Then he set it beside the photo on the wall. He looked at both his family, his son's love and whispered, "Thank you, Ethan. You don't even know what you just did." The rain outside began to slow. The thunder faded into the distance. The air felt lighter, almost peaceful. John turned off the lamp and sat by the window. He could see his reflection in the glass, tired, yes, but alive. He thought about calling Sarah. But fear held him back. What if she didn't want to hear from him? What if Ethan had sent that letter months ago, and it only found him now? Still, the idea of hearing his son's voice again made his heart race. He whispered, "Tomorrow, tomorrow I'll try." He leaned back and closed his eyes, still holding the letter close. For the first time in years, he slept not from exhaustion, but from a strange, quiet hope. Outside, the clouds began to clear. The moonlight touched the corner of the letter on the table. And if someone had been standing there, they might have seen the faintest smile appear on John's face, the first in a very, very long time. The next morning, sunlight pushed through the thin curtains of John's apartment. The rain had stopped, and the air smelled fresh, almost new. John opened his eyes slowly. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then he saw the letter on the table, the small brown envelope from Ethan. He sat up, rubbed his face, and smiled faintly. The letter was still real. It wasn't a dream. He picked it up again, reading a few lines, and his chest filled with warmth. But as he read, something else began to rise, two old memories, buried deep under guilt and pain. He leaned back against the couch, eyes half closed. The sound of the city outside faded away, replaced by echoes of the past. It was 5 years earlier. John was sitting in his pickup truck outside a small house on the corner of Maple Street. His head was pounding from another sleepless night. Inside the house, he could hear his wife, Sarah, shouting. Her voice was sharp but full of fear. "John, you can't just quit again. We have bills, Ethan's school, the rent." He cut her off, slamming his fist on the dashboard. "You think I wanted this? You think I like getting fired?" She appeared at the door, her face tired, her hair tied in a messy bun. "I'm not saying that. I don't know how much more we can take." Inside, their 5-year-old son, Ethan, was sitting on the floor with his toy cars, watching quietly. His small eyes followed every word, every sound. John's voice cracked as he said, "I'll find something. I promise." But he had said that too many times before. Promises didn't pay bills. For weeks, he had tried odd jobs, construction sites, repair work, but no one was hiring. His back hurt more every day. The painkillers barely worked. And every time he failed, Sarah looked at him with that mix of worry and disappointment that tore him apart. That night, after another argument, he had sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the wall. Sarah was in the bedroom crying. Ethan was asleep. The house felt small. The air felt heavy. He whispered to himself, "They'll be better off without me." He stood up, packed a small bag, took his wallet, and walked toward the door. Just as he opened it, he heard small footsteps behind him. "Daddy!" John froze. He turned around. Ethan stood there in his pajamas, holding a small stuffed bear. His hair was messy, and his eyes were sleepy. "Where are you going, Daddy?" John forced a smile. "I'm just going to find work, buddy. I'll be back soon." Ethan stepped closer, holding out his hand. In it was a shiny coin, a silver dollar that John had given him months ago. "Take this," Ethan said. "It's your lucky coin. You said it helps brave people." John's heart broke. He knelt down, took the coin, and hugged his son tightly. "You keep it," he whispered. "You're the brave one." Ethan frowned. "You promise you'll come back?" John nodded, trying to smile through the tears that burned his eyes. "I promise." But when he walked out into the cold night, that promise already felt like a lie. He drove for hours, not knowing where he was going. The city lights faded behind him. The further he went, the emptier he felt. Now, years later, sitting in his dark apartment, John felt the weight of that night again. The memory stabbed at him like a knife. He whispered into the silence, "I broke my promise." He thought about Sarah, how patient she had been, how hard she had tried to hold the family together. He had pushed her away every time she tried to help. He thought about Ethan, the little boy who believed his dad was brave. And now that same boy had written a letter, years later, still believing that his father was out there working hard, still thinking he was someone worth loving. John's eyes filled again. He never stopped believing in me, even when I gave up on myself. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was bright, children were playing in the street, and neighbors were talking. Life was moving forward the way it always did. But inside, John's world had frozen in time years ago. He turned and looked at the photo on the wall again. It was taken the week before everything went wrong, their last family trip to the beach. He remembered Ethan's laughter, the way Sarah smiled at him as if everything was still okay. He could almost hear the sound of the waves and his son's voice shouting, "Daddy, look. I found a seashell." For a moment, John closed his eyes and smiled. But when he opened them again, he was back in his empty apartment. The picture faded, the laughter gone. He clenched his fists. "No more running," he said quietly. "No more hiding." He sat back on the couch and looked at the letter one more time. The words were simple, full of love. Ethan didn't ask for money or gifts. He didn't ask why his dad left. He just said, "I miss you and I love you." Those words were enough to break any wall, any pain, any excuse. John took a deep breath. For the first time in years, he felt a strange fire in his chest, a small, shaky, but real sense of purpose. He whispered, "Maybe it's not too late." He picked up his phone, turned it on, and stared at the blank screen. His fingers hovered over the keypad. He hadn't called Sarah in years. Would she even answer? The thought scared him. But another thought scared him even more, doing nothing. He looked again at Ethan's letter and said softly, "You gave me courage once, buddy. Maybe you can give me courage again." Outside, the light from the sun touched the photo frame on the wall, making it glow. John smiled faintly. The past still hurt, but now, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning of something he still had a chance to fix. The morning sun filled John's apartment with soft golden light. Dust floated in the air, moving slowly through the beams of sunlight. It was quiet, not the heavy silence from before, but a calm, gentle one. John sat on the couch with a cup of coffee in his hand. The smell of it felt strange, warm, alive, like something he hadn't enjoyed in a long time. On the table, Ethan's letter lay open beside the photo of his family. He read the letter again, every word sinking deeper into his heart. "I hope you're okay, Dad. I love you." John whispered, "You saved me, kid." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about ending things. He was thinking about beginning again. But the thought scared him too. The idea of facing Sarah after all these years of seeing Ethan and explaining why he left, it felt impossible. What if they hated him? What if Ethan didn't even remember him anymore? He sighed. "You deserve the truth, at least," he murmured. "Even if they never forgive me." He stood up and walked toward the small mirror near the door. The man staring back at him didn't look like the father in Ethan's drawings. His face was older, his eyes tired, beard messy. But behind all that, he saw something, a small spark of strength, something he thought he had lost long ago. He whispered, "You can still change." He took a shower, shaved, and put on a clean shirt, the first in weeks. He even combed his hair. As he looked in the mirror again, he felt human. Not perfect, not new, but alive. John grabbed a small backpack. He didn't have much, just a few clothes, his wallet, and the letter. Before leaving, he looked around the apartment one last time. It was a place filled with pain, but it had also become the place where he was given a second chance. He turned off the lights and locked the door behind him. Outside, the city felt different. The same streets that once looked gray and lifeless now felt brighter. He could hear children laughing somewhere nearby. Cars passed, people talked, life moved, and for the first time, John felt like maybe he could move with it. At the bus station, he bought a one-way ticket to the small town where Sarah and Ethan lived. His hands shook as he handed the money to the clerk. The woman behind the counter smiled politely. "Visiting family?" she asked. John nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said softly. "Something like that." He sat on a bench, waiting for the bus. The air smelled of gasoline and dust. He looked around at the people, families traveling together, kids with backpacks, tired workers heading home. Every face told a story. And for the first time, he realized everyone was fighting their own battles. He wasn't alone in his pain. As he waited, he took the letter out again. The edges were already soft from how many times he had opened it. He traced his son's handwriting with his fingers and whispered, "I'm coming home, buddy." The bus arrived with a loud hiss. John climbed on, found a seat near the window, and leaned his head against the glass. The engine started, and soon the city began to fade behind him. He watched the buildings turn into trees, the noise into silence. Mile after mile, memories came and went, some good, some painful. He remembered teaching Ethan how to ride a bike. The way Ethan laughed when he finally balanced on his own. The way Sarah smiled from the porch, clapping. He remembered birthdays, bedtime stories, Sunday pancakes. He remembered the laughter that once filled their home. And then, he remembered the nights when everything went wrong, when money ran out, when tempers rose, when love turned into silence. Tears filled his eyes again. He wiped them quickly and whispered, "I can't change the past. But maybe I can change what comes next." Hours passed. The sky outside began to turn orange as the sun started to set. John felt his heart race the closer the bus got to his old town. He hadn't been there in so long, he didn't even know what he would say. What if Sarah didn't open the door? What if Ethan didn't want to see him? His hands gripped the seat tightly. But then he looked down at the letter again, those words, "I love you, Dad." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "That's enough. That's all I need." The bus finally stopped. John stepped out, feeling the cool evening air on his face. The town looked almost the same: small shops, quiet streets, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery he used to take Ethan to. His feet felt heavy as he walked through the familiar roads. Every corner held a memory. He passed the park where Ethan learned to kick a soccer ball. The swings creaked softly in the wind. He smiled and whispered, "You always loved this place." Finally, he stood in front of a small white house with blue shutters. The porch light was on. The sound of a dog barking echoed in the distance. His heart pounded like a drum. This was it. Sarah's house. His son's home. He hesitated at the gate, his hands shaking. He wanted to run, to turn around and disappear. But then he remembered the night before, the pills, the rain, the darkness, and how one letter had stopped him. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Not this time." He walked up to the door and knocked gently. Inside, he heard footsteps. A woman's voice, calm, soft, familiar. "Just a second." John's chest tightened. It was Sarah. The door handle turned. The door began to open. John's heart raced faster with every inch it moved. And then, the door opened fully and his past stood right in front of him. The door opened slowly, and Sarah stood there frozen, shocked, eyes wide with disbelief. For a moment, neither of them said a word. Time stopped. John stood on the porch, nervous, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked tired but somehow different, cleaner, calmer, with a kind of light in his eyes that hadn't been there in years. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice shaking. Sarah's lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at him carefully, almost afraid to believe he was really there. "John," she finally whispered. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. It's me." For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Memories flooded between them: love, anger, pain, laughter, everything that once made them a family. John took a small step forward. I didn't come to cause trouble," he said. "I just wanted to see you, and Ethan." At the sound of that name, Sarah blinked fast, her eyes softening. "Ethan," she repeated quietly. Before she could say more, a small voice came from inside the house. "Mom, who is it?" John froze. That voice, he would have known it anywhere. Sarah turned slightly toward the hallway. "Ethan," she said gently, "come here, sweetheart." A moment later, a boy appeared. Taller now, maybe 8 or 9, wearing a soccer shirt and holding a small ball. His hair was golden brown, just like in the photo, just like John remembered. Ethan stopped at the doorway, confused. "Mom." Sarah stepped aside, her voice soft. "Ethan, someone's here to see you." John's heart beat so fast he thought it might stop. His hands trembled. His throat felt dry. When Ethan looked up and saw him, his eyes widened. He stared for a moment, confused, searching his memory. And then, slowly, his face changed. His eyes filled with tears, his lips trembled, and he whispered, "Dad." That one word broke John completely. His knees went weak. Tears filled his eyes before he could speak. "Hey, buddy," he whispered, voice cracking. Ethan dropped his soccer ball and ran forward. "Dad," he shouted. He threw his arms around John's waist and hugged him tight. John fell to his knees and held his son close, holding him like he was afraid to ever let go again. Tears rolled down his face as he whispered, "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry." Ethan didn't say anything for a moment. He just held on tighter. "I missed you, Dad." John nodded, his voice shaking. "I missed you more than anything." Behind them, Sarah stood quietly, watching her own eyes shining. There was no anger in her face anymore, only sadness mixed with relief. After a long while, John pulled back slightly, looking at Ethan's face, the same bright eyes, the same small smile. "You got taller," he said with a soft laugh. "And stronger, too." Ethan grinned shyly. "I play soccer now. I scored a goal last week." John's eyes widened. "You did? That's amazing." Ethan smiled wider. "Yeah. I told you in my letter." At that, John froze for a second. He looked at Sarah, confused. "The letter, when did you send it?" Sarah smiled faintly. "He wrote it months ago. He didn't know if we could send it to you, but he insisted. Said you'd get it when you needed it most." John swallowed hard, emotion rising again. He looked at Ethan, tears filling his eyes. "You were right, buddy. It came exactly when I needed it." Ethan tilted his head. "Did it help you?" John nodded slowly. "It saved me." Sarah stepped closer then, her voice soft but steady. "You really came back, John." He turned to her, guilt and gratitude mixing in his eyes. "I know I hurt you. I left when I shouldn't have. I was lost, Sarah, and I thought you and Ethan would be better off without me." Sarah sighed, her eyes gentle. "We were never better off without you. We just learned to survive." John lowered his head. "I don't expect forgiveness. I want to try again. To be the man Ethan believes I am." There was silence for a moment. Then Sarah smiled faintly, small, tired, but real. "People change," she said softly. "Maybe we can start with that." John nodded, tears still in his eyes. "Thank you. That's all I could ever ask for." Ethan looked between them, smiling. "Does that mean you're staying, Dad?" John looked at Sarah. She gave a small nod. He smiled at his son. "If you'll have me." Ethan laughed and hugged him again. "Of course I will." The three of them stood there for a moment, the past finally quiet between them. The pain hadn't disappeared, but something new had taken its place, understanding. Later that evening, they sat on the porch together. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and pink. Ethan sat between his parents, talking about school, his soccer team, and all the little things John had missed. John listened to every word, smiling, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying quietly. Each story felt like a gift, a piece of the life he thought he had lost forever. When Ethan ran inside to get his drawings, John turned to Sarah. "Thank you for letting me be here," he said softly. Sarah nodded. "He needs his dad, John. And maybe, you needed him too." John smiled faintly. "More than anything." Ethan came running back out, waving his drawings. "Look, Dad. It's us, me, you, and Mom." John looked down at the crayon picture. It was simple, colorful, the same way Ethan's letter had been. 3 smiling faces under a bright yellow sun. John's eyes filled again, but this time with joy. He pulled Ethan close and whispered, "It's perfect." The sky darkened, the stars appeared, and for the first time in years, John felt peace. The darkness that had once filled his heart was gone, replaced by light, by love, by a second chance. He looked at Ethan, smiling. "You saved me, son." Ethan laughed softly. "I just wanted you to come home, Dad." John nodded, his voice gentle and full of love. "And now I am." The camera of life would have zoomed out then, showing the three of them sitting under the soft glow of the porch light, A small family made whole again by the power of a child's love and a single letter that came at the right time. Moral. Sometimes, one simple act of love, a letter, a word, a memory can pull someone back from the darkest place. Never stop believing that love can heal.